Do you ever get that feeling where you suddenly really want to play a game and then you find out it's just gone, like completely delisted and wiped off storefronts like it never existed? And yeah, technically there are other ways to play these games, such as buying the game on disc, but sometimes they can be quite pricey. Or if you are on PC like me, then there is the old sell the 7 Cs method, but we're not here to talk about that today. Today I'm going to go through 5 games that I desperately want to play, but can't because they've been delisted. Anyway, let's get into it. Alright, first up, Lord of the Rings War in the North. This game dropped back in 2011, which honestly feels like peak Xbox 360 PS3 era. It was developed by Snowblind Studios, and 2011 in gaming was stacked. Like, you had the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, Dark Souls and Batman Arkham City all dropping around the same time. Gameplay wise, it's basically an action RPG set in the north of Middle-earth, running alongside the events of the main story. You've got 3 characters, a ranger, a dwarf and a loremaster, and each one plays differently. It's very much that classic run forward usabilities and loot gear kind of game. Nothing super groundbreaking, but in that era of gaming, that was kind of the vibe, right? Now for me, this is one of those games that is tied to a very specific memory. I got this for my birthday in 2012 when I was like 10, and at that point I wasn't even a big Lord of the Rings fan. My entire experience with the series was basically playing The Fellowship of the Ring and The Return of the King on PS2, which by the way, from what I can remember, Return of the King was such a fun game. But anyway, I barely remember the story from War in the North, which is expected because of how young I was. Like, if you asked me to name a single character from it, I couldn't, if we don't count the characters that show up in the movies. But I do remember some moments. The intro in Bree, where it's raining and everything feels kind of calm and cozy, that stuck with me. And the early mission in Fornost as well, just exploring those ruins and freeing a great eagle. Then there's this one section, I'm pretty sure it was in Mirkwood, where I just got completely stuck. Either the game bugged out and wouldn't let me progress, or I was just a dumb kid who missed something obvious. Honestly, it could be either. So the reason I really want to go back to this now is because of that whole era of games. Those slightly janky hack and slash RPGs, they just had that feel to them. Like, they weren't perfect, but they had charm. And now that I actually care about the Lord of the Rings a lot more, not like hardcore lore expert level, just a normal fan, I feel like I'd appreciate this game way more now. The War in the North got delisted around 2018 or 19, and like all the games on the list, it came down to licensing. Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment had the rights to make and sell Lord of the Rings games through Middle-earth Enterprises, and once that license expired, that was it. Alright, so next up is Spec Ops: The Line, and this is one of those games where I feel like I've missed out on something important. This game came out in 2012 and was developed by Jaeger Development. Now, they're actually still around today, but they've had this kind of an interesting history. Before this, they made stuff like Jaeger, and more recently they worked on the Cycle Frontier, which didn't exactly stick around for long. But Spec Ops: The Line is the game people always bring up when talking about them. This is one of the games on the list that I've never actually played. I somehow dodged it completely, but I've heard so many people say it's a great game. I mean, it's sitting at around an 8.3 user score on Metacritic, which is pretty solid, especially considering how great the lineup of games were in 2012. The only thing I know about this game is the white phosphorus moment. Even if you haven't played the game, you've probably heard about it. It's kind of infamous at this point. From what I understand after doing some research, the game follows a squad of soldiers sent into Dubai after a sandstorm, trying to find out what happened to a missing battalion. And it starts off like a pretty standard military shooter, but apparently it gets a lot darker the further you go. Like, it's not just about shooting enemies, it's more about the psychological side of war and the choices you make. Gameplay wise, it looks like a really solid third person cover shooter. You've got your squad with you, you can give them basic commands, take cover. It's very much that early 2010 style. Think like a mix between Gears of War and your typical military shooter, but with a bit more narrative weight behind it. And honestly, that's kind of why I want to play it. Because on the surface, it looks like just a fun shooter, like something you can pick up and enjoy. But it seems like it's more than that. And those are usually the games that end up sticking with people the most. The next game I want to talk about is The Walking Dead Survival Instinct, which came out in 2013 and was developed by Terminal Reality. Before this, they worked on stuff like the Ghostbusters, the video game, and the old Blood Rain games, but after Survival Instinct, things didn't go great, and I've never actually played this either. But the reason it's on my list is simple. I'm a big fan of the Walking Dead TV show. However, I only got into the show a couple of years after the game came out, but once I did, I was hooked. So naturally, anything tied to that world instantly gets my attention. But by this time, I think the game was already delisted, which happened in 2016, only 3 years after the game released. But anyway, what makes Survival Instinct even more interesting is that, at least from what I've seen, it's more or less canon to the AMC series. It acts as a prequel, following Daryl and Merle before the events of the show. And that alone is enough to make me want to play it because I'll take any extra story I can get. Even if I do eventually play this game, I'm not going into this expecting a masterpiece, let's be real. The game has a 38 critic score and like a 2.7 user score on Metacritic, which, you know, is not very good, and pretty much every video or review I've seen says it's not great. But at the same time, I saw this one review from someone called CoreGamer1408 that said, "My The Walking Dead fan brain overrode the many flaws of this game." And honestly, that's exactly how I feel going into it, because if this was some random zombie game, I probably wouldn't care, but because it's The Walking Dead, I feel like I'd still get something out of it. Gameplay wise, it's a first person survival game where you're scavenging for supplies, managing resources like food and fuel. You've got that kind of semi-open structure where you choose routes, manage your group, and try and make it from one place to another without everything going horribly wrong. So on paper, it actually sounds kinda cool. But then you see the execution, and yeah, it most likely isn't the best. If you are a fan of The Walking Dead or you have played this game, then please let me know how you found it. So let's now talk about Operation Flashpoint Red River. This came out in 2011 and was developed by Codemasters, which is a studio most people probably associate with racing games like Dirt or the F1 series. But for a while they had this side thing going with more grounded military shooters under the Operation Flashpoint name. They're still very much active today, mainly doing racing stuff under Electronic Arts now, but this whole tactical shooter phase they had, that's kind of a relic of that early 2000s to early 2010s era. Red River itself is set in Tajikistan, and instead of being this over-the-top arcade shooter, it goes for a more grounded, squad-based military experience. You're leading a fire team, giving orders and managing positionings of your team. It's slower and more methodical. You can't just sprint in like it's Modern Warfare 2 and expect to survive. You actually have to think a bit, which at the time was quite different. Interestingly, I have played this. This was another game I got for my birthday, and looking back now, I would have been like almost 9, which raises a lot of questions. Like, why did I have this game at that age? But then again, I was also playing Saints Row 2 and State of Emergency, but this was normal, right? Playing games like this at that age was normal, I think. I don't remember finishing the game or anything, but I do remember being really into how different it felt, even though I probably didn't know what I was doing half of the time. And honestly, that's the main reason I want to go back to it now. Not because I think it's some hidden masterpiece or anything, because I wouldn't even know that, but more so just for the nostalgia. Red River was delisted on Steam in October of 2018, and the reason was the same as all the others. It was for the licensing expiring, but for this game it was probably due to the fact that the game had real-world branding on the weapons. And finally, the last game I want to cover is Mercenaries 2 World in Flames. This came out in 2008 and was developed by Pandemic Studios. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because they also made the original Star Wars Battlefront and Destroy All Humans. Unfortunately, they're not around anymore. Pandemic got shut down in 2009 by EA, which honestly still feels like a loss looking back, because the last game they developed was The Saboteur. I haven't played this game, but I have heard that it is pretty good. So the whole premise is you're basically a mercenary dropped into a war-torn Venezuela, and you're just doing jobs for different factions, blowing stuff up and making money. The story itself is pretty simple. You get betrayed at the start, and the rest of the game is you working your way back up and getting revenge. But it's really just there to give you an excuse to cause absolute destruction. Because that's what this game is really about, as the gameplay loop is satisfying in a very hectic and fun way. But the real standout mechanic is the support system. You can literally call in airstrikes, supply drops or vehicles and backup. I think another game has this type of system as well, but I can't think of what it is off the top of my head. Anyway, I remember playing this a few years after it came out because it was actually my brother's game, so I kind of came into it late. But even then it didn't matter, it still felt amazing to play. But to be honest, back then I used to just mess around for a few hours, blow everything up and not even care about the story, which if I did revisit the game, I would focus a lot more on the story, even if it isn't the greatest, because narratives are my favourite parts of any type of media. What's kind of interesting though is that the game only got delisted relatively recently, considering it came out in 2008. It stuck around on digital storefronts way longer than most of the others on this list. Also, there was supposed to be a Mercenaries 3. After World in Flames, Pandemic Studios were reportedly working on a third game, and from what's been said over the years, it sounded like they were going even bigger with it, expanding the destruction, improving the open world, basically taking everything that made Mercenaries 2 fun and pushing it further. But then Electronic Arts shut down the studio in 2008, and just like that, Mercenaries 3 was gone before it even had a chance. Anyway, please let me know down in the comments what delisted games you enjoy the most, and also tell me if you have played any of the games mentioned in this video. Thank you for watching, and as always, I hope you have a great day.
So enticing, my back.